Welcome to this channel. I narrate allegedly true, scary experiences, while trying at the same time to keep you relaxed with calming sounds like rain, thunderstorms, and campfires. If this sounds like your kind of thing, subscribe, and please like the video so that it gets recommended to more people. Also, if you would be more interested in relaxing sounds with no scary stories, please check out my other channel, Just Relax. Every video on Just Relax is 8 hours long, with high-definition sounds of rainfall, rushing rivers, and coming soon, campfires, and a video that I filmed myself of the Oregon coast. Go check it out, and it would help me so much if you would subscribe. Lastly, as always, I need to let you know that I keep the ads at a minimum here. Only 3 ads in this entire video, after the first 3 stories. I hope you enjoy, and thank you for being here, when I know you have so many other choices. Now, let's begin. This isn't exactly my story, but I was the one with the tidbit that makes this story scary. I used to be really involved in youth group at my church, and every summer, we went to confirmation camp at a camp in the woods. This camp is in the middle of harvest country, so there are a lot of fields where migrant workers will find employment. Sometimes, if they need to shower or get water, they will go to secluded parts of the camp and use the facilities. Some people also own property or live around the camp. None of the people around camp have ever harmed a camper, but we are all told to be careful in general. During a weekend retreat, I stayed up late to talk to a group of the counselors, and we shared our favorite stories about camp. One boy, we'll call him Aaron, told us a story about a man he ran into at confirmation camp. He said it was his first year at camp, and he didn't really know his way around that well. He had gone with one of his friends to the nurse's cabin to get medicine, and was running late to a group activity. As they left the nurse's cabin, he ran into a man who was just walking around the camp. They asked him who he was and asked for directions to the pavilion. He told them that he was the nurse's husband and that he could take them to the pavilion. As Aaron was telling this story, I asked him to describe the man who said he was the nurse's husband, because there were 2 nurses. The one nurse is around 85 years old and widowed, and the other nurse is a lovely older woman who goes to my church. He said the man wasn't too old, really tall, and bald with a mustache. He then continued his story. He said that the man led them around for a bit until they eventually got to the entrance of a path that led to the woods. They were both a little concerned because they didn't remember the leaders telling them that the pavilion was in the woods. It had also gotten very dark, and the man was the only one with a flashlight. But they still followed him down the path, into the woods. A minute or 2 into the walk, the old man's flashlight died, leaving them without any light at all. The boys told the old man that they were going to turn around and go back into camp to see if they could find another leader. The old man was hesitant, but eventually gave in, and they all walked back to camp. As they got back into camp, the boys asked the man if he really knew where the pavilion was. The old man just looked at them and said, "Follow the path behind you around those bushes and it's on your left." Then the old man left the boys and disappeared back into the woods. The boys made it back to the pavilion for their group activity and just thought the entire thing was weird. As Aaron finished the story, I had a horrible feeling in the pit of my stomach. Before, I mentioned that I knew the nurse's husband. He's average height, with graying hair and no facial hair at all. I have no idea who the tall, bald, mustached man was that led the boys into the dark woods that night. Who knows what he was up to, and what he would have done if he had taken them further into the trees. I live in rural southwestern Ontario, in a town called Tillsonburg, in the heart of the Tobacco Belt. I was born and raised in Norfolk County, and have since lived all over the province, and my sleepy little corner of the woods is without a shadow of a doubt as bizarre as it is isolated. It isn't isolated in a physical sense, more so in the sense that it has always and will always be rural farmland, peppered with Carolinian forests, small towns, and the kind of self-hatred you can only find out in the country or in small towns nobody ever escapes. Now, like most small communities, belief in the paranormal is quite common. These things can easily be explained away. Historically, rural communities have a tendency to hold on to superstition, and the soul-crushing boredom that small communities are faced with often presents a golden opportunity for a story. Due to a traumatic event involving a violent carjacking, I moved in with my girlfriend's family about 6 months ago. I have heard countless stories about ghostly encounters in this house from my girlfriend beforehand, which usually left me in an odd combination of sincere belief, skepticism, and intrigue. That is until I started having experiences myself. My first encounter in the house was 6 months before I moved in. My girlfriend, like I said, filled me in on plenty of stories about the entities she has encountered here, and while her experiences correlate with her parents' own experiences in the house, she by far has the most frequent encounters. According to her, there are 3 active entities in her house. An old woman who lived here in the 1930s, a tall and hulking dark male energy, and what we call the Crawley Boy. While she is sure of the identity of the woman, she has never been entirely certain that the latter 2 are indeed 2 separate entities. Whether the Crawley Boy is the same entity as the tall man is unclear. We aren't entirely sure why he crawls, if it is meant to scare us, or if this was just some poor guy who had his legs crushed by some farming equipment. We were sitting in the living room in the early morning, around 1 a.m., maybe 2 a.m. To this day, she tries way too hard to stay up with me. The pristine silence of a mostly asleep house is an enticing prospect for the introverted. We were sitting and watching TV when she starts complaining about seeing wisps, usually indicative of a migraine. A few minutes later, I started seeing them too. "That happens down here at night," she said to me. "Sometimes I think it's just a migraine, but then sometimes other people see it too." 5 or 10 minutes later, I happened to glance over into the adjoining dining room, and wouldn't you know, I saw it too. It's hard to accurately describe, but I'll try. You will see movement out of the corner of your eye. A white, shapeless mass will register in your periphery, usually whipping by or disappearing as soon as you turn your head. Sometimes you don't even register it, as it can resemble a coming migraine or exhaustion. But if you pay attention to the room around you, it is anything but normal. As we are sitting there, I glanced up into the dining room and noticed that something was off. It was as if the room was distorted, as if the room itself and all of its contents were vibrating, and that vibration caused everything to just wiggle. Seeing this, any rational mind in the modern age would probably jump to gas leak as a probable explanation for this. But I swear to you, our carbon monoxide and gas detectors are functional. If there was a gas leak in the house that was large enough to distort the appearance of an entire room, we would all be dead. So we're sitting there, just watching and wondering what could cause this, when out of nowhere comes the unmistakable feeling of being watched. My girlfriend suddenly shifts her gaze to under the table. Ugh. I look, unsure of what I'm seeing. I could have sworn that I saw a blur along the floor, under the dining room table. It was then that she tells me that she had seen something crawling along the floor and seemingly hiding. At any rate, it's gone by this point, but the feeling of being watched is still very much present. Time goes by, and we go back to doing what we were doing. I had gotten up to get a refill and sat down, picking up the remote but fumbling, and dropping it. As I get up to lean down and pick it up from beside the recliner next to me, I catch a glimpse of something I can hardly believe. As I pick up the remote, I see something under the couch. Something moving. I focus in on what I'm seeing, and my brain finally registers what it is. An arm. A thin, pale arm with what I can only describe as silvery, putrefied skin as it skulks back further under the couch. Every horror movie on Earth has prepared us for this situation. Nothing good comes to those who look. And so, we didn't. 6 months later, after I had moved in, we were sitting on the front porch in the heat of the summer, talking about whatever, when the subject turned to ghosts. Like I said, just about any person living here will tell you a ghost story, if you talk to them long enough. This particular conversation involved the creepy statue of the Virgin Mary at the church across the street. And somewhere in the conversation, her son, just recently having turned 10, looks up at us and says, "One time I saw a man without legs, and he was crawling past our house from over by the hospital toward the church." Okay, so bear with me. This happened when I was a kid, and I double-checked the story with my family. This was in the mid-'80s. I was about 7, at home with 2 of my older sisters, who were 8 and 11, and 2 cousins, who were 7 and 8. All 5 of us girls. My sister, 11, was in charge of babysitting us 4 younger girls. You have to picture what our house looked like to understand what happened. It was a 2-story box-style house with a flat roof and a small box front porch, also with a flat roof. I can't remember what we were doing, but we were all in the house. We kept hearing noises coming from the roof, like walking, and what sounded like rocks being dropped down the downspouts. You know, kids, we thought of a squirrel or something, but it kept happening. Then my older sister said something about how maybe someone climbed the huge tree beside the house and climbed onto our roof. We were all scared because we knew there was a roof access point in the bedroom that I shared with one of my sisters. My oldest sister told my other sister and one of our cousins to walk across the street to the corner store, and on the way back, look up and see if they could see someone on the roof. So the girls left. They walked halfway across the parking lot, and being curious kids, they turned around, looked up and saw a guy in one of those totally 80s guys' cropped top football jerseys. Think Johnny Depp in A Nightmare on Elm Street. He was crouched down on the roof. The girls came running home, freaking out, and told my oldest sister about the guy. She, freaking out, first went to the neighbor's house to use their deck to see if she could see on their roof. But she couldn't see anything. She came home and then called the police, and it felt like it took them ages to show up. When they finally arrived, I don't think they believed a word we said. One cop drove down the road, up a hill about a block away, to see if they could see anything. But the way the roof was, you couldn't see a person if they were laying down.